This is Fit Amputee, powered by James Robert Fitness, and this is episode 24 of my podcast. And today's guest, I've got Alif Bland. He is a former basketball player for both the Cheshire Phoenix and Bristol Flyers of the British Basketball League. Thanks for coming on the show, Alif.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So we were talking briefly off air about your basketball career, and what could you explain to both the listeners and the followers on YouTube how you got about into basketball in the first place, and what was kind of the catalyst to what you wanted to do in terms of taking up the sport?
Well, I don't really have the most conventional story when it comes to basketball. I started in 11th grade, so around 15, 16 with basketball, competitively. I never used to play it really. I was more into track or volleyball. Um, and because I was so tall, everyone was like, you should play basketball. And that at first I was being really stubborn because I'm like, just because I'm tall doesn't mean I want to play basketball. But then I just tried it one summer and I really started to like it. Wasn't good by any means, but it piqued my interest. And then I played on the JV team, and then I played varsity my senior year, but I got injured. um, I was growing really fast, so I injured myself in that sense, and so I didn't really play that much my senior year. I was thankful enough to go to college, and once I was there, that's where I started to really develop. Like I picked up work habits and how to work out and skill workouts to get better, and then it grew into a love for the game. And I never thought that I would play professionally. But after college, everyone was like, "You definitely need to go play because you've grown to such a great player." And and then once I did, I understood that I could do it at this level, and just took it from there.
And you talk about that you did obviously volleyball and track in high school. Did you kind of use those skills that you learned in those two sports to transfer over to basketball?
Oh yeah, for sure. I actually still played track while I was in college, and I actually went to nationals one year as well. And it was definitely something that helped me because I believe all sports help each other. So it was something that helped me because with volleyball, the vertical leaping, that was a great plus for basketball, and with track, the speed and footwork that you need for track really helped, especially me playing as a big man, like a forward and a center. That was something that really helped because a lot of big men don't really have the footwork that they should have or that like a guard would have. So that helped me to have that edge over most people who played in my position. So yes, it was a big plus, and I definitely used those things that I learned in track and volleyball over to basketball.
And you talk about that you had the opportunity to go onto that collegiate stage after high school. What level did you get to play at?
So I played at Division II NCAA. Um, and at first they weren't even Division II. They were what's called NAIA, and it's like the second tier. And because our basketball team was doing so well, it had brought more attention to the school, more following to the school. We actually were able to move up to D2 and NCAA, and so that was a good accomplishment just for our school and personally for our team. It was nice to see that recognition of our hard work.
And then in terms of for the listeners that don't know the collegiate system in the US, what would be the kind of we'll kind of do it from a school perspective. what are kind of the enrollment size differences between your school, for example, and that of a Division One? Uh, we'll say, for example, a Division One school in the same state, and obviously from that, the attendance is differences in terms of what crowd you can generate for a big game.
So our school was roughly around, I want to say like 6 to 7, maybe 8 at the most thousand. And that's really small. Um, I want to say a D1 school that, let's see, in my state, a D1 school would be probably around 60,000 people. And it's huge. Like that's really huge. And as for games, depending on the school and how good they are, the numbers you could have at that gym is astronomical. I mean, some of the stadiums are like football stadiums, so they could have, I mean, up to 30, 40,000 people fit in there, and most of the time it's about 90% full. So um, they could definitely put most of the school into a gym, and that's what they usually try and do because it brings so much revenue in. College sports brings so much money. It's ridiculous how much money it brings into the school. So it's something that they really try and push to get people to come to the games because you think about it, it's not only the students. Sometimes it's the students' parents as well or family, so that just brings in even more people. So yeah, it's really different compared to the UK, especially with how many people actually come to not just basketball but just sports in general. I mean, I guess football would be up there as one of the sports that could understand with the amount of people that come to the games, amount of fans. But other than that, like at the collegiate level, I don't think none of the schools there have really experienced that.
No, it's probably something I can attest to talking to different people on different podcasts about obviously that level of exposure that you get in the US, and it's more or less a cultural thing in terms of you have that structure in place of okay, high school basketball or say college sport, high school sport in general is played on a Friday night. You move over to college sport being played on
Right.
Saturday predominantly, and obviously in terms of American football, obviously if you use the football analogy, you'll start. So we'll say American football. You'll start on that Friday night for high school,
Yeah.
Saturday for college, and move on to if you're good enough play on Sunday, and that is kind of a cultural. I wouldn't say phenomenon, but in terms of you have a system in place that if you want to get from A to B, this is the curve you want to follow. And in terms of the collegiate system, it is as you say, it is a business in itself in terms of
Yeah.
what revenue it brings into the university in terms of its television exposure and things like that, be it in state and or nationally. So this
Right.
is a question I'd like. Well, to the best of your ability, this is probably a big one in terms of national exposure in the US, and some of the listeners might have not heard about this, but in terms of ex collegiate athletes now well, I wouldn't say suing their former alma maters about being obviously paid for their time
Right.
at the respective universities because the university is making money off them, but the only recognition the college athlete gets is obviously that full scholarship. So what I would like to ask you is what is your take on that situation about collegiate athletes getting paid?
Mm. Well, I definitely believe that they should get some type of compensation. um, because it actually is very hard. I mean, granted, at a higher level, they get a little bit more than some like at the D2 level, D3 level, but they also have to do a lot more. They have a lot more advertisements. They have a lot more practice, and also they're traveling a lot more. And I think they don't put that into like consideration when they're actually, doing these things. And also, they're selling these players jerseys, merchandise, and making millions off of it. Not just, and that's just merchandise alone. I mean, they're obviously making a lot of money off of the tickets that they sell and screen time for playing on CBS, with one of the national television not websites, but the television channels, and they make so much money off of that, off of these players just playing a game, yet they can get none of that money or receive any type of compensation, I think is a little outlandish. And um, I think it's kind of taken advantage of them. Granted, they are young, so they don't really need that much money in their pockets, but it does help to have, some sort of money in your pocket, or just to know that, what you're doing is being appreciated, I guess. It helps it helps you to feel more appreciated if you're getting a little compensation for what you're doing. Granted, they're not professionals, so they shouldn't be getting paid millions, or you know what I mean?
Hmm.
That's not where they're at right now, because then that would take away from what they're actually trying to do, and being a student athlete and making sure they get that actual degree. Um, and then, just the ego of it all, the psychological aspects of them thinking that they're a professional athlete, they can't be trained and all this stuff because they think they're already there. um, it would kind of take away from the NBA. But I do believe that yes, they should have some type of compensation.
And in terms of that you say, what was your personal circumstances as far as a D2 scholarship?
So I got partial scholarship. At the time, they weren't able to do full scholarships, because we were in AIA, and then we moved to NCAA. But in that process, we weren't they weren't able to give a full scholarship. So while I was there, I was never allowed to get full scholarship, but I got the highest scholarship they were able to release. But it was only a partial scholarship, so it paid for about 75 or 80% of my total college career. So I was blessed to have that, though, because a lot of people have so much money they have to pay back at the time, and I don't. Granted, I still have to pay some back. It's just it's not as bad. Um, and then they would like pay for my books and things of that nature. So,
And in terms of, I think the argument they raise as former athletes is it only covers, well, we'll say for the D1 in perspective, they say that obviously their full scholarship only covers, was it food Monday to Friday, but they only get, and this is off the top of my head now, I think it was between $50 and $100 for the weekend, and then in the week they're getting, I think it's like twice as much. What did you have to do in your personal circumstances to cover obviously the shortfalls that you had because you were only on a partial scholarship?
all right. Well, I mean, um, see, I paid extra to get a meal plan, um, and it was you get 3 meals a day, and I think it was one, no, it was 2 meals on the weekend, I believe, or 2 meals every day on the weekend. And when we were when we would go for trips and everything, it depends on the college, because ours, he would just pay for us, like 3 meals he would pay for us. But if we did, obviously there's so much time between those meals, so we would have to come up with whatever we wanted to eat during those times. And granted, my parents tried to help me, but it was hard, trying to help me and help, take care of themselves, and because I'm already in college and I'm away from home. So I would get like a job on campus, and I would work just to get, work a few hours a week just to have some type of money in my pocket. And it was tough because, obviously had school, I had basketball, and I had a job. So it was a lot of work. And I feel like I would have been able to study more and practice more if I didn't have to worry about money and food. So it's an interesting concept.
And then once you graduate, obviously, the British fans kind of know you from your time at Cheshire Phoenix and Bristol Flyers.
Right.
What was it like coming in initially to, well, it is a different country and a different culture. What was it like that first season in the BBL?
Mm. Um, at first, really it was just like shell shock, honestly. Very different, um, kind of scary just to be somewhere so far where I didn't know anyone and didn't know anything really about the country. Um, and it was a it turned out to be a great experience, honestly. Made some lifelong friends and people I consider like family, and that actually made it a lot better. But it was really funny to see the difference in how people are in England compared to being from New York, and the aggressive nature of people in New York, and then the slow paced, very family oriented, friendly nature of the UK. It was just complete opposite, and it took me a while to get used to it, honestly. But then once I got used to it, it was like I had been there for 10 years, you know what I mean? It felt like I was always part of this community. So that was actually very, very welcoming and very comforting to see. That's why I like England so much.
And then you were kind of, well, I kind of kept in touch because I'm from the same areas, well, near enough to where Cheshire Phoenix is based. We kind of kept in touch later on, and you
Right.
were saying, oh, what did you ended up playing in South America
Yeah.
for a little bit.
Um,
Where else did you uh, kind of take your talents to after the first year in Cheshire, and then the time in between going from Cheshire to playing at Bristol? Where did you kind of have to take a job?
well, I went to Mexico and I played there for a little while. That was actually not a good experience. I left there probably within a month and a half. That was a rough place to be. Um, but then after that, I went to Germany, and I really liked it in Germany. It was a good experience. And then I played in wait, no, where did I go? I played in Germany. Then I went to Ecuador, and then Bristol, I believe. And then I played in Japan this past season.
And then obviously some fans may or may not know obviously the sacrifices, well, a professional athlete has to come to terms with to progress their career. Could you kind of, well, not going into great detail, kind of explain some of the trials and tribulations you've had to endure
Mm.
throughout your career?
Um, well, the main one is just the difference, the cultural difference of being in a different country by yourself. Um, if you really don't know too much about the country that you're going into, it can be a complete culture shock. So that's one of the main things that's hard for a lot of people because they're so set in their ways of being wherever they're from and maybe not going around and traveling that much. So from being there all the time and then leaving and going into a completely new place by yourself is very challenging for a lot of people. Um, Also, just being away from your family is a big second. uh, I have a daughter, so it was tough for me to leave her. Granted, she was very young at the time, so it was easier that way, but it's very hard leaving your family because, that's your family. So it's hard to, not be able to talk to them all the time, especially depending on where you are. There's time zone differences. So sometimes you'll be up and they'll be asleep and then vice versa. So it was hard to like communicate with them. And so it was tough in that sense for sure. And also being an import for sports is held to such a high standard. There's not really any like job security for imports, so you have to always maintain this high level of playing ability, or it was just going to be like, it's time for you to go, and we got to get someone else in to do what you're supposed to be doing. So it's always that stress of always being able to, you know, play at that level and produce whatever they need you to produce, which was, a big task. But it kept people going because it gave you something to pay attention to, I guess. So you won't worry about not being here, not being at home, or not seeing your family. So I guess it has its pros and its cons.
And you bring up that point of import players being in a way held to a higher standard. Do you think in terms of certain leagues that you've had the opportunity to play in, do you think that is you raised it as pros and cons of it? Do you believe it's can be a detriment on your game at times because obviously you're having to think about, well, if I don't play well, I could lose my contract.
hmm yeah, for sure. It definitely can. It's hard not to think like that, but you have to try not to because honestly, if you think about it all the time, you're not going to be able to focus on the game because everyone has bad games. So it's not like you're not Michael Jordan. So and even he had bad games. So like I feel like a lot of players go through that, especially newer players go through that where they're thinking about like, I need to produce or they're gonna let me go or they're gonna send me home, whatever. And it's really not as bad. I mean, granted, you can easily go home, but that focusing on that is detrimental to yourself because it's only going to make you play worse. So I tried not to really worry about it as much during the game. Granted, before and after the game, I'm worrying about it, but during the game, I tried to just focus on the game because if I were to think about that, just get in my head and so I tried to really shy away from thinking about that while playing.
And you raised that point early on about obviously the cultural aspect of moving from country to country. If we bring it back to more on the basketball side of things, did you find that you had to adjust to how would I put it, a cultural way of officiating from country to country and how they interpreted the rules in that particular country?
Mm. Um, I did, yes. Uh, I think one, they have their own rules for Americans as well. A lot of officials would, I got want to say like, how do I put it? They would see different calls for Americans or not see them for Americans because of who we are. Um, Granted, that's not okay. I wish they would do it in a equal way, I guess. But I do think that in that sense, how I was saying we're held to a higher standard. I think even the officials hold people like imports to a higher standard, and with rules and how they call things, especially on the court, um, varies to how good you are and how they see you, how good they see you, and so I mean, especially as a big men don't really get that many calls to begin with, anyways. But being an American import big man playing against British or European players, they see that as, oh, he should be stronger, he should be able to fight through it. So they don't usually give you as many calls. Or for guards, they really look for like officials. They really look for traveling or offensive fouls. They really look for those because oh, Americans are always traveling, or Americans are so aggressive, so we gotta try and protect our players, I guess. But I've seen that, and it's different in every league that I've been in. South America is probably the least change because everyone's kind of at the same level because it's basketball is really big in South
Mm.
America. But Japan was actually the most drastic change I've seen, where they really cater to their countrymen. So like they make sure that they're okay. They make sure they're not getting hurt or injured or fouled a lot, or they're really very meticulous when it comes to looking at Americans. So it was um it was a learning experience because you really had to learn on the fly. I think I got maybe four offensive fouls in my first two games and like three travel calls. But I mean, you learn as soon as you have to learn on the fly because, like I said, your job's on the line, so you learn pretty quickly.
And in terms of the leagues that you did play in, which was the most physical?
Um, Probably, I would say Japan, honestly, because like I was saying, they didn't really call that many things for the Japanese players. So we had to score with, people like pulling your arms down and just like really trying to take you out of your game. And it helped me though in the long run because now I expect that. So it's made me more aggressive on the court and make me able to play stronger and harder. So it was a good thing in the long run, but it was as I was playing, it was kind of not what I was looking for.
Mm. And my final question before we wrap it up, if you had a choice of all the places that you've played in, where would you most likely wanted to play for a longer period of time if that was your choice?
Hmm. Um, if we're strictly going off of how I would have to live there and while playing pro ball and everything, I would say England because honestly, I loved England. That's why I went back the second time. I loved England so much. So it was great, and it was a great experience being there in England. Then going to from Cheshire to going to Bristol, it was a complete different change. So it was like, wow, there's so much going on here, but it was a crossover between America and like Europe to me. So I feel like that would be my main place to be.
Hmm.
Um, Basketball wise, probably I would say. Hmm. Germany was actually really good basketball wise. I really liked the basketball. It was very fast paced and high intensity basketball, which I like that. So I would say for basketball, Germany to live in, England though.
Okay, that's quite an interesting point. And finally, what would you like to say to either the supporters of the Cheshire Phoenix or the Bristol Flyers as a thank you for, well, obviously there's that appreciation for the, I think it was 2 years that you were over here in the end then?
Yeah.
So what would you like to say to them?
Man, there's it's too much to say. Uh, I just honestly just want to thank them and thank them for being so honest and real and taking us in, especially with the as we were the Cheshire Jets into the Phoenix in that transition. It was so helpful and it made things so much easier for us to take off of worrying about that and basketball. It made it so much easier. And I mean, like I said before, I made lifelong friends and people I consider like family to me. And the same in Bristol. I've never experienced that in America outside of my own family where people are so welcoming right from the start. And that Bristol gave me that as well as Cheshire. And I just thank them so much and wish I could be there on a daily basis. You know what I mean? I wish England was closer.
So yeah, so thanks very much, Alif, for taking the time out your busy day and your family life. And also, one we didn't raise is that you're now what was it, assistant coach for your old university.
Yes,
So
yeah.
you're very very bit. You're probably about mid-season now.
We're actually just starting. Our first game is on the 11th, so getting close to the beginning and trying to get them ready, man. It's a different aspect to being a coach.
Oh yeah, but you've been there and seen it all. So you kind of when they're in that having that hard day, you can say, "Well, I've
Yeah,
been in your shoes."
right.
So just push through it to a certain extent. So I'll definitely keep an eye out and keep an eye on see how your school is doing. And wow, we'll say you got a little fan over this side of the world. In
Thank
terms
you.
of I'll keep it. Well, I either keep in touch with you or keep an eye out on social media and see how the school's getting on.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
what once again, Alif, thanks very much for taking the time out of your day to
Thank you for
come on the
having me.
show. So thanks again.
Thank you.
This podcast will be aired every Thursday, so until next week, I will see you then.